my allure to the marine industry. It was like, these are the boats that I like, and I just want to figure out how I can help these people and be involved in that. I don't want to take the claim that I'm the only one that's ever done a survey and a mechanical, but I think my mission was really to be able to scale that and create a community of people doing that. As a surveyor, you're not going to go to somebody who's not inside of your company and say, what do you think about this? Or how do you do this? But if you create a company with people that have done it and procedures and systems and guidance, then you build this machine that has more knowledge and information so that the whole community and the whole industry as a whole gets a better report, because that information is available to more people and the quality is better overall.
You're listening to the Rising Tidecast, the podcast for sharing the stories, the lessons, and all the good stuff from legends in the marine industry. Welcome to another episode of the Rising Tidecast. Today we get to hear from Aaron O'Donoghue, who is the founder of Boatbuy. He's an innovator in the industry, and he's carved out a really unique niche, redefining how boat inspections and surveys are done. And he offers a combined survey and mechanical inspection that provides a more comprehensive and hassle-free service to his clients, based in Sydney and the Gold Coast. Aaron, welcome, mate.
Thank you, Stephen. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be on such a high quality podcast.
Smoke and mirrors, man. No, just kidding. No, it's great. It's awesome to have you on and finally meet you in person. I've seen a ton of you on social media, especially now after doing a bit of research on you on the podcast. Your ad retargeting is doing a fantastic job. I'm seeing you all over the place. So apart from your ads, though, I know you provide a ton of helpful educational content online. And so you clearly get like how that plays a role in the success of your business. So I think that is really cool. And you've got a really unique story. One part stood out to me the most is that you left school at 15 and went straight into the marine industry as a marine mechanic. Take me back to that moment. Like, what was it that made you stop school and say, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, sure. So look, it was a little bit like I got given an ultimatum. So I wasn't a big fan of being stuck in the classroom. And for me, the thought of another 2 years, year 11 and 12 at school, was a little bit like torture. So my parents said, if you want to leave, you can, but you have to have a job lined up. So prior to that, I'd done a little bit of work experience as a marine mechanic. So I'd sort of carved out roughly where I wanted to be. And then I had to do some cold calling. I found 3 local boat shops and I said, hey, are you looking for an apprentice? I'd already scoured online because I'm a little bit of a nerd at heart. I'd, pretty good on the computer. I'd figured out where all the job listings were and there wasn't anything quite close enough. So yeah, went out there and I ended up convincing somebody to take me on as a first year apprentice. The rest is history.
That's awesome. I love your keenness in that stage. It's like definitely a sink or swim moment. What did you think from the taste that you had that career was going to be like back then when you first jumped in?
I don't know if everybody feels the same way, but for me, when you walk down a marina arm and you have like a giant flybridge cruiser, with a flared bow, a flybridge towering over you, it's like an atmosphere. Like you think, firstly, who created this? Because I like them already. And secondly, who owns this? Because I want to be around those sort of people. So for me, that was my allure to the marine industry. It was like, these are the boats that I like. And I just want to figure out how I can help these people and be involved in that.
In Australia, walking the docks here and stuff is a very cool experience. And then growing up for me in America, it's the same thing. You're out on the water. Like we had a little center console driving around New Jersey. And then you see these monster Vikings and Baylesses and stuff going out the inlet and coming back in. And I was definitely like, oh my God, like this is such a cool experience to see these, but then to get to fish on them is an awesome thing. When you got the job, what was the job like in reality, like as compared to what you thought it would be?
I mean, I would have had a 1-week work experience glimpse, and that is probably the highlights. You do sort of think, hey, I'm going to be cruising around the harbour, I'm going to be on these boats. And it was that, but it was just the ratios of that were probably about 10%. And the other 90% was upside down in an engine bay or, in the bilge somewhere, slugging it out in the heat or in the rain. But with that being said, it taught grit and perseverance, right? Once you've done that, anything feels easy, so to speak.
Oh, especially in the Sydney summer heat. Like it takes a special passion to stick with it since you're 15, I think, for as long as you had doing that. And the marine mechanics that I know, they just absolutely love it, because from an outside perspective, it could be on that show, like, what is it, The Worst Jobs or something like that, that what I forget what the host is, but from the outside, I think it looks like not as glamorous unless you really love it. So how did it change your view from what you thought it was going to be to then after that honeymoon period was over and, you're a couple years in at that stage?
So I think your perspective on what's actually involved with running a boat changes. When you've done, a trade as a marine mechanic, you realize all the extra bits and pieces that go into it. And that's not just the mechanics. There's shipwrights, there's yards that do anti-foul, there's painting, there's cosmetics. So yeah, it definitely increased my awareness of how serious it is to own a boat, but it definitely didn't, take away from any of the enjoyment and the love of being in the industry. There's nothing better than pulling up in a bay and you see somebody that that you've done some work for before and they're enjoying it just as much as you.
I think the longer you're in it, the more enjoyable it becomes. And so what was next? Like, how did you get to where you are today with Boatbuy?
There were moments where I was a little bit stuck. I thought, what's next in the career? You do see people in all different areas, all different careers that started as marine mechanics. So it was really just figuring out where I wanted to go. The way I got there was by taking the risk and saying, hey, I'm going to get there and now I need to work back and figure out how to get there. So I started off by doing mechanical inspections, but then I thought from the customer's perspective, I'm really probably only doing half of it. How can I incorporate the whole thing? What would I want if I was buying a boat? I'd want to know every single thing that I possibly can in a reasonable amount of time. So then I went and got the diploma in marine surveying. And then once I'd sort of tied those two together is when it really just took off. I just went all in. It started as a side gig. And then once I did that, it took off and there was no time for anything else but thinking about surveying and business. And
it's awesome when you find something that just all of a sudden you're doing one thing and then you find the one thing that really makes you happy and is a great market fit. And then you can't help its success. It sounded to me like there was a point in this journey where you changed your vision. Like your vision was always just enjoy this job. Then all of a sudden you started thinking about the customer more, which sounded like that helped you develop your offering. Was there like a moment in your career, the light bulb moment, if you will?
Look, I think I've always been in my head calculating, what business am I going to start one day? And as a marine mechanic, there's a lot of enjoyment in fixing something and you start something, you fix it, and then you get that enjoyment of it's all finished. But sometimes it lacked talking to people. So you might be a mechanic that's working on something and then your boss goes and sends them the invoice and deals with the customer. I really like engaging with other people and, I think it can be something that's quite joyful in life. So that next level was combining the two. And that's sort of how it got to surveying and dealing with people and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, it would definitely be a bit lonely in an engine room all day and not really speaking to many people. What motivated you to then say, okay, this is what I'm going to offer now? Like, what were the iterations of finding this sweet spot that you're at now?
Truth be told, when I first started, I was like, hey, I'm going to be a boat buyer's agent. Sure enough, I launched the website in 2015 and I sat there for 6 months. I remember I came home to my wife one day and someone asked me how the business was going and no one had inquired and nothing had happened. And, I had that positive, oh yeah, it's okay. But inside I was burning up.
Yeah.
Sure enough, someone actually did hire me for that at one point. But what I found was there wasn't really enough demand for that. And then when I got the surveying side of it, it's like people like to pick their own boat and then I could outline exactly what sort of condition it was in and then they make the decision. I probably back then also, I probably didn't have the selling skills and I just didn't have that experience back then, but I had a very good technical background and I could communicate with people and that was my strong point. And so I sort of built off that.
Playing to your strengths, I like it. Putting the happy, smiley face on in that entrepreneurial journey where things aren't going great, but you have so much belief in like, you're going to make this happen.
Yep.
And I think it's an essential trait in people that own their own business or starting something that they really love to do and believe in it. What got you through that time? Like, what was it that you think is unique to people like you or, other people starting a business where it's tough and you just got to persevere and get through?
I think with any business, there's going to be periods of hard stretches. They're not all necessarily going to be at the same time. For me, what got me through was the small progress. So, 6 months went by, but then someone actually did book me for that service. But then I had the opportunity to build on that because I could be like, what did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And what I found was that first customer, I actually inspected 10 boats for this guy to find the one that he wanted. And I thought, this probably isn't also going to work, because if I'm inspecting 10 boats for one transaction, long term, that might not be the way to go. And it was the small incremental progressions that sort of keep you going. And then it just spirals into a lot of progress.
One thing we were talking about before we started recording was feedback, right? And how important that is, like, to both of us.
Yep.
The feedback, not only from the customer about what they enjoyed, but I think feedback internally, instead of just like grinding and saying, well, I'm going to do this is what I'm going to do, taking the time to step back and ask for feedback, but also like see if you're enjoying it or if it's going to work out as a business. That's something that's, I think, really important in growing like a business that people love dealing with, actually. You're very into tech, which
Absolutely.
I love. So am I. We could probably nerd out on an entire podcast about tech stuff, but I know you developed an app that you use constantly. What is it and how does it help you and how does it help the customers that you deal with?
Yep. So it's basically just an iOS app, and it's designed to systemize the process of report writing. When I got to a point where I was flat out myself, I thought, I do actually want to scale this one day, but how do I set up the system so that if I hire somebody, they can do an equally as good report as me day one? So the app basically just automates that. It gives you a checklist. When you're doing a survey, there's a lot of distractions. So you'll have a buyer, you'll have a seller, you'll have a slipway. Sometimes you can have a breakdown. It's like having the key points so that you've always got that checklist to go back to as well. And it also helps with arranging the report. So photographs, I believe that having a lot of photographs in a report, like if you've got a problem with something and you want to see what the problem is and you can take a photograph of it, I think it should be in the report, because it's a lot easier to look at a photo than to explain something to someone. So it helps with all of that. And it also just helps with sort of having a library of everything. I've got every report I've done. There's thousands in there. If someone calls me tomorrow, you did a boat for me 2016, I can jump in the app, load it up, and hey, bingo, there's the report.
Talk about saving time too, searching for things.
Yes.
Wow. I had an experience with a car mechanic. Similar, had their own app. I don't know if it was one they developed or not, but man, that's the only time I've dealt with somebody with an app like that, where you take your car in for an oil change, right? And then they do the oil change. They don't charge you for anything else, which I loved about this mechanic as well. But also, you get a report on your car. They went around the whole thing, did this whole inspection for you. And like, yes, I know it's a sales tactic. I know it's like a little bit like scary, like, oh, do I want to know that stuff?
Yep.
But man, talk about peace of mind. And then also talk about like understanding what's to come as far as maintenance and the value of your car. It was like photo, description, red light, yellow light, green light. And it was like the best. I loved bringing my car to and spending money with them just because you feel like you can trust them, because everything is out in the open and they're not like asking you to do more than you should, because the profession of mechanics, right, is largely understood by the majority of people that own something with an engine, right? So I think having that app and just being transparent and doing those detailed reports, it's such a cool, great thing for boat owners and people looking to sell or buy their boat, to give a fair value and an overall view of what's wrong or what's great about the boat.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also speeds up the process too. So by having it all there and you're doing it in let's say you're waiting for a boat to get slipped, you've got time to fill out some of that report. You're not just sitting there eating a sandwich. We might be doing that as well.
You can. Actually, from a customer point of view, who do you serve a lot? Are you mostly dealing with brokers or buyers, agents, and then individual boat owners? And then how do they benefit individually from the app?
It'll be a whole range of different people that I'll deal with. So boat brokers, private boat sellers, private boat buyers. They benefit basically by having a more comprehensive report, having more pictures in there and getting it quicker. When someone's buying a boat, there is an insane amount of urgency because they're excited. They want this thing ASAP. If they could have the survey report done yesterday, they would. And that's probably the biggest benefit of doing it as you go, is speed, but also consistency. If you write a defect up, you can put it straight in the app. Whereas, back in the day, you might have taken a photo of it, you might have written it down, you might have forgot about it. If you have too many, that it's too hard to put them all in. Whereas you put it in, it's a quick and easy process to put it in. So it becomes more thorough as a result.
What other tech are you really excited about that's out right now?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things to get excited about. Online tech, things like advertising platforms are pretty amazing these days. Facebook, even TikTok. Like I know it's not that many people on it yet, but I've had 70, 80-year-old customers say, hey, I saw you on TikTok.
People always have that same story about TikTok where everyone always thinks it's just the young kids, but it's actually not. Or it's the young kids showing the old people if they're not on it, right?
Yeah, it might just be the young kids commenting, but like the people actually watching it can be all different ranges. Other tech, like there's some pretty cool boat tech. So like seakeepers, we never used to have them back in the day. That's an amazing new innovation. Even just like autopilots that can track a plotted course. Yeah. FLIR, like I don't know if you've seen some of the thermal imaging stuff, but
nuts. Oh, it was at the Ray Marine stand just at a Sydney boat show, and they were like, I've been on boats with them out to sea and stuff. It's a game changer, especially when one doesn't have it and you're with one that does. Yep. You're in the front when you're leaving before the sun comes up.
Yep.
And it's night and day. It was so funny at Sydney Boat Show. Liza was there, it was Ray Marine, and like you could see who's like sitting in the windows at the pubs so far. Like some of their technology is so cool. I love it.
It is next level. Like you'll be able to see, the fish underwater even.
So cool. And how about apps wise? Like what are you excited for?
Yep. So there's a guy, Mike from Decky, and he's got a really cool app that shows you where people have actually boated. So I've always used that app. Like it's had a lot of alterations and he's changed a lot over the years. I've always used that app if I'm in a new area and I don't know what's around. I can see firstly where people boat. I can see where the fishing spot is. I can see where the wharf is. That's a pretty cool app. It does have a lot of integrations like weather and stuff too. So, old weather apps are starting to become not required.
Right.
Another app that I use a lot of is just Navionics. If you don't know Navionics, it's a navigation app. It's basically like GPS for a boat. It gives you speed. It can plot courses for you. Same again, if I'm in a new area that I've never driven a boat before, it can plot in the markers. It can give you a total time it takes to get somewhere if you put the speed of your boat. This is all stuff that we didn't have 10, 15 years ago. Pretty amazing.
It is so cool. We had that the other day. Friend Stubbsy, where they were delivering a boat from Newcastle to Sydney, and I was supposed to go out and film with the drone when they got, and was getting screenshots from Navionics of like plotting the point to the Sydney heads, and it was spot on. Like,
yeah.
5:06 p.m. Sure enough, there they are. Like it's amazing. Like for many aspects, it's very, very cool.
Absolutely.
Do you use Decky in the work that you do every day or apps like that? Is that a thing? Because you're out on sea trials and stuff, right?
Yeah. So probably more Navionics. I'll use Decky for weather, but Navionics, so I know how fast the boat's going. So every time I do a sea trial, I'll bring the boat up to wide open throttle and we'll get a top speed and I take a screenshot on Navionics. So, 3 years ago, I can check, hey, this, Viking 64 did this many knots at this date at this RPM. So it's sort of record keeping, but also navigation if I'm in an area where I don't know and, let's say the person selling the boat doesn't either, I've always got it as a backup. The only other time I've used it was, early on in the days when I brought a boat back from Melbourne once. The whole time it was Navionics on iPads and it worked amazing.
Anything that gives you more confidence when you're out there as far as like, I'm not going to run into Bommy or some other crazy obstacle I don't know about, goes back to what you do, right? The more confidence you can give people in their boats, in their boating journey and buying their boat. I'm always trying to find out too, confidence-wise of like, if you do this marketing, if we make this content together, this is what I know to be true. And people love that. That's part of the whole, I think, recipe of finding your offering is finding what works and then making it, I guess, something that people love and benefit from.
Absolutely. And that's another thing with tech. Through marketing, you can test offerings and you can see how much interest you get for them. And then if it's a go, you can scale into that as well.
Speaking of content, I can tell from your content that you really understand your customers like we're talking about and what they want and deliver a lot of your content on that. I know you have a pretty large following on Instagram and YouTube and stuff. When you first thought about making content for the business, take me back to that time. Like what was it that drew you to putting in the time and effort to do it? And what were you looking to get out of it?
I think it all started with online SEO. So you start with written content and then it sort of transforms into video content. The goal was just to get brand awareness and to help people. I suppose when you're marketing, you want to define your audience. So the biggest takeaway that I learned relatively early on was how can I put out a piece of content that somebody with a boat would only watch? So that way you're then defining your audience and you can keep marketing to them. If it's too broad, like I remember an early campaign that I did like 2015, it was like a confused baby. And I thought, oh, surely someone will watch that, but it had nothing to do with boats. And it's like, it was a complete flop, that campaign. You would have been better off with just a high-end boat and it would have got more engagement.
Yeah, it's such a great start to your journey that most people take a really long time to get there, because I find that we a lot of times make content that we want to make or that we would watch. But putting your client first and the people that own the boat and the people that you want to help, which was a big key thing there, and educate, bit of entertainment as well. Thrown in the mix is never a bad thing, but having that target client in your mind every time you create a piece of content is such a great thing to do. Was that just natural? Like, I mean, from what we talked about before, you're very interested in people and the people that you want to deal with and stuff. So it seemed like a very helpful guy in general. So is that something that you come up with, or did you see that somewhere?
I think it goes back to what you were talking about before about feedback. It's finding what people like, thinking about the questions that somebody asks you on a survey, and then answering them in video content. Sure enough, you start to see a trend there. There's only so many questions people ask you, and that's all your content ideas.
That's perfect. Are you sure you don't want to go into marketing? That's literally like the best formula. Like, you have something for every single part of your sales journey. You have all the FAQs that you could ever need. It's just such a great way to provide value that people actually want to watch because they're actually asking the questions. Not a hard concept, but not done, I think, to the scale that it needs to be for some businesses.
I will say, like, I don't want to take all the credit. I didn't just stumble across it. I do, vigorously read on topics that I like, marketing, psychology, other successful business owners. And then you'll take pieces from another industry and you'll try them out in this industry. And it's fun. It's enjoyable.
It is great. I love experimenting too with it and seeing what sticks. When did you start doing it? And then what's the impact that you think it's had on your business as far as creating content consistently over the years?
Creating content is the best thing I've ever done for the business because it's at scale. So you can only answer so many phone calls in a day or reply to so many text messages. But if you can answer those questions online via written video, podcasts, you've answered 5 questions and then they've only got 1 question left to ask. It's tenfold. It's like the best thing any business could do.
The content that you make has you in it. And there's a whole huge trust piece that it's associated with buying something from someone. When you're talking about things that you don't know about, like the mechanics of your engine occasionally, you want to go to someone that you trust, that you think's a likable person or funny or something you enjoy watching and listening. And that is the other huge pieces of the content, putting a face to the brand and making people feel comfortable.
Absolutely. People want to buy from people. They don't want to buy from a computer. So a face behind the brand is what every business needs, essentially.
Do you get feedback from customers about like the content that you put out there?
Absolutely. So, you don't think people are watching, but a lot more people are watching than you realize. They might say, hey, I watched your video on, vetting a diesel engine. What do you think about this? It is hard to get ideas. Like, people don't necessarily come to you with ideas. You have to come up with that because they don't really know what they need until they search it. But there are also online tools, like you look at what people are searching on Google, you look at what people are searching on YouTube, and then you can make content relevant to that.
Do you use SEMrush? SEMrush is a great one too.
I have.
Yeah, for endless ideas on content that people are actually searching for that you can make.
Yeah, like even if you're not writing a content piece, it's good for video ideas too, because you know what they're thinking, and then you can make something that's useful to someone.
Another great recipe. I'm in. Thinking about the content that you have made, is there one specific time that something that you made actually made like a significant difference in the experience of one of your customers?
Yeah, so I think the content constantly makes a significant difference in the experience of the customers because they're better educated and they know what questions to ask. I get a lot of small comments thrown in all the time, like regularly, like weekly. So like someone will weekly say, I saw your Instagram post, or I saw your video, but I don't necessarily get someone say, I saw your video, but I didn't buy that boat because of your video, or that sort of thing. Like they learn from it and they ask the right questions. So with that, there is a little bit of privacy involved when you're surveying someone's boat. It is a bit tricky because you don't want to publish the results of a survey publicly, But that's why people buy your services, because they want to know the truth about the boat. There are plenty of, really good customer stories. They're not necessarily from the content, but from the survey. So like, for example, I had a boat where we took it to sea trial and the engine exploded. It was, 50 grand rebuild before he'd bought the boat. And he was like, hey, I'm so glad we did the survey because, there was talk of not even doing a sea trial. So there's definitely a lot of those moments, but I'm just not sure so much about the content side.
Bad timing, good timing on that one.
Yeah.
Customer service is obviously a big priority for you. You built your offer around it, making it easier for customers. What are some of the key things that you do to maintain those strong relationships with your customers over the years after they've used your services?
It sounds simple, but like just remembering every customer that you've done a boat for and saving their number and what boat they have so that when they do call, you can remember what you spoke about. And if you don't remember, you research it while you're answering the phone. This is their survey. I remember this boat.
Yeah.
Putting out content that's relevant for them, connecting them with the right people. So like you might hear from a customer a year later, hey, I need a shipwright, marine mechanic, electrician. My boat's now in a different waterway. Who do you know up there? And then you can say, hey, here's 3 different options. These are the ones I'd try. That sort of thing. And just being available when they need you and answering the phone. And I always like, to my wife's dismay, when I get a phone call at 7:00 at night, I've got this burning urge just to call them straight back and talk to them for half an hour.
Yeah.
It's just that feeling that you get inside. You just want to answer it.
Well, you stand out, right? Amongst the other people that will wait a couple days. And it's because you care. I think that's a huge factor. And you love what you do. So you're hungry for the business, but also probably want to help. The first one to call back is usually the one that gets it, right? Or a lot of the times, I think. And you mentioned too, like one thing that's really important. I think having a network to recommend for people is like a huge advantage to building your trust, I think, with them and also helping them out. So you would have a lot of vendor relationships as well that you're maintaining from all the people that are coming to you. How do you maintain those relationships? Like what is it that you do for them that's special or unique?
My goal with my service is to only refer people based on how good they are. So I always try to link up people that are like-minded, or that would get on well, or that can help each other. So a lot of the time in the marine industry, there's certain things that you don't even know exist because you've done a few laps of, Sydney Harbour, Pittwater, whatever. In the back of your mind, you've got all these people in all these areas and you link them up and, they do good stuff together.
It's a great way to build the industry and build each other up. I think not having that scarcity mindset too, just you're not going to do everything. So giving the people that deserve the work, it's a really great mindset. Talking about how when you're going around and seeing the beautiful Sydney waterway, like we're pretty lucky, especially because you're in Sydney and Gold Coast as well. 2, I think, of the definitely most amazing boating destinations in the world. I know that especially coming from New Jersey, which is beautiful, but Sydney's just on a whole nother level. Like it's silly how beautiful it is. So for those not lucky enough to have visited our waterways here yet, what do you think makes Sydney such a special place for boating to you?
Sydney has 4 waterways that are in really close proximity to each other. So like you go full south, you've got Port Hacking, which is like amazing sandbars, nice wilderness, not too busy. You go a little bit further north, you've got Botany, you can watch the planes take off, there's fishing, there's a waterway that sort of heads right up. And then, an hour outside the heads from that in a powerboat, you've got Sydney Harbour, which is like all the hustle and bustle. But if you know where to go, you can be in complete wilderness. And then north of that, you've still got Pittwater, the Hawkesbury, the Central Coast. And these are all waterways that, as a boat owner, private boat owner, you can be almost within each one and within an hour.
It's amazing. It's just endless places to explore, and have the best days out. There's quite a few, like the boating community around here is really great too. I think there's like a lot of, I can think within the circles that you're in. I haven't been too often to like Port Hacking, but last time I was there, it was a big raft up and it was just like the best day ever. And you're like, wow, this is just such a different experience from not being able to go out on the water or not experiencing that part of Sydney. It's such a cool thing. Do you have a favorite spot to go to in warm summer's day? Who's on your boat? What boat are you on? What are you doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 probably favorite spots up the Hawkesbury, places like Refuge Bay, kick back near the waterfall, pull up a mooring. And then the other spot, which is an all-time favorite, is Spring Cove in Manly, also known as Jump Rock. It's just a really nice, clear water. There's a rock to jump off if you dare.
If you're keen enough.
So who would I be with? Firstly, it'd be my wife and the two dogs and the kid. We'd be probably bopping around at Jump Rock, jumping in and out of the water. For me, it'd be on a boat big enough to not be on a trailer, but small enough to be a single engine.
Yeah, right.
So let's say, ideally it'd be like an Axopar 28 or something like that. So you can get to the other side of the harbour or Pittwater when you're done, and there's no putting the boat on and off the trailer.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely a big plus there. That sounds like a really good day. So your career is a testament, I think, to not giving up. It sounds like you've gone through a lot of iterations. You're laser focused on what you want to do, and it's gotten you to where you are now, progressing and evolving your offering over the years. For someone that's keen to get into the industry and start their own business or even work just in the industry, finding something they love, what advice would you give?
So I would say start with something that you like, but don't focus on everything. Focus on one niche and just go all in with that. And then once you know a lot about that field, then you can figure out your next steps and it'll all work itself out. There'll be times where you think, where do I go next? But as long as you have those ambitions and that drive, you'll figure it out.
As a creative person, I love variety. Like that is my, we'll do forever. I used to do all the things. Like I'll learn how to do a different type of photography. I'll shoot a product and then the next day I'll out shooting a wedding or something. And I think I never wanted to specialize and just laser focus on that one thing, doing one thing for one industry, because I thought it'd be boring and I'd be uninspired. And so I never did it until recently when I planted my flag basically in the marine industry. And then I realized how untrue that belief really is once you find the thing that you really love to do. It's great advice. If you can just focus on one thing, try it out. If it doesn't work out, you move on. So in that journey that you've been on, you've taken a lot of risks and carved out that unique niche for yourself. What role do you think the risk plays in achieving that long-term success being in the industry? There's probably a couple parts to risk. One of them being the risk of missing out on things that you think you might love, but you never experience. But then also I think risk of you're not sure if it's going to make it, but you put all your eggs in the basket and just know that it's going to work, right? So I guess what does risk look like for you?
Yeah, sure. So I think everything we do, we have to take a little bit of risk if it's going to be rewarding. So for me, risk is doing something that I'm uncomfortable with. It's not so much financial risk. Yeah, risk is just doing things that you're uncomfortable with, putting yourself out there, because at the end of that, you learn from it and then it doesn't feel risky anymore.
Yeah, that's huge. And I always thought of that as financial risk, right? I interview a lot of people who are really successful. They own these giant boats, right? And I always ask, once I get to know them, what contributes to the success? And it's risk, but a lot of it has a huge financial impact. So that is a great different view on it, I think, just to really love what you're doing and pursue that. You've also set yourself apart in creating something that's unique in the industry. How do you think that's contributed to your success?
Look, I don't want to take the claim that I'm the only one that's ever done a survey and a mechanical, but I think my mission was really to be able to scale that and create a community of people doing that. As a surveyor, you're not going to go to somebody who's not inside of your company and say, what do you think about this? Or how do you do this? But if you create a company with people that have done it and procedures and systems and guidance, then you build this machine that has more knowledge and information so that the whole community and the whole industry as a whole gets a better report because that information is available to more people and the quality is better overall.
That's awesome because you're looking out, it's your vision to grow it, right? But you're also, it's not just about growing the business, it's about serving more people, which is a very cool part of the vision and the reason why you're growing Boatbuy.
Yeah, the idea is that people can get some consistency wherever they buy a boat. So hopefully, expand into other states and then they know exactly what sort of report they're going to get anywhere in the world maybe one day.
Yeah, I like it. That's what's great about apps, right, too?
Yeah.
How has that passion for boating and being on the water helped you build a network of like-minded professionals?
You end up gravitating towards the people that are like yourself. Yeah, you're out on the boat, you meet other people. They might also be business owners. So then you've got that in common. And boating just grows that network and community. And you end up hanging out with the most amazing people that you want to hang out with. It's like you create your own life. You end up where you are because of what you've done and who you've hung around with. I think boating sort of accelerates that.
Has there been like an unlock in helping you grow your network over the years?
I think just industry events and making the time to go to every industry event that you can and not focusing on your own business, learning about everyone else's business so you know what's available in the industry so that when you need it, you can point a customer in that direction and linking people up. I think linking people up is the best unlock because they're grateful that you linked them up and it's a win-win.
Yeah, you get to be the connector. At the beginning of your journey, did you know how important your network was?
At the beginning of the journey, I was probably more of a nerd, so I'd focus more on the online marketing because I didn't have to leave the house. But like you can have a whole business without online marketing. But then when you have both, it's like this superpower.
Yeah. Yeah, I find every time when I'm in here editing in the studio for like a few days in a row, I'm like, this is not helpful for the business at all. It's great to have content to get out there and show your face online, but man, like building those relationships and being top of mind because you had a connection with somebody in real life in the industry is, I think, one of the best assets for the growth, at least for my business in the last few years. It's like just developing those relationships, and you have to be out there doing it, not behind the computer making your ads and stuff like that, although it's important.
Absolutely. It was like you said before about, noticing my ads after we'd spoken, you notice because you've had personal contact with someone and you become more aware of it.
Yeah. Also didn't realize how tall you were from your ads. I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Sure.
Are you ready?
Yes.
So first thing that comes to mind, number one, if you could have a superpower, what would it be and why?
Oh, look, if I could have a superpower, I would see straight through engines, hulls, so I could see everything. And the reason why is because you could write the most amazing report and you could save so much time diagnosing and pinpointing things. It would be like incredible.
You would be the number one person recommended for in the entire world. There's your worldwide strategy. You just got to figure that out. What's your favorite boat you've ever worked on and why?
I've always been a big fan of Maritimos. So like in my head, the dream is like an M48 Flybridge from like '07. It's just something about the way it looks. That's the boat that gives me that feeling when I'm walking down the marina and you look over and you see, a flared bow and a quality boat. You're like, that's it.
Awesome. What's the worst thing you found during an inspection?
Look, I've had boats partially sink on inspection. A shaft seal failed on a sea trial and the boat started taking on a lot of water. We had to take off the water intake from the engine. Instead of sucking the water from underneath the boat, we had to suck out the water from in the boat. So the water in the boat was cooling the engine and then getting pumped overboard. We got it back and, sure enough, they slipped it. But that was probably the worst thing that happened on an inspection.
Definitely not something you plan for. Do you have a pre-survey ritual or habit that you always do?
So I like to know, buyer and seller's name. I like to look up the boat. One of the most useful things I can do is have the service history, but that's not always available. But if I've got the service history, I can see what was done when, and then I can sort of get my mind working already before I'm there. Preparation. Preparation just makes things feel easier.
Oh, 100%. I feel like it's the same answer. What's the craziest thing that happened during a sea trial? Is that the one?
Oh, no. Like
It's a crazier one. All right.
I've had lots of crazy things happen. So like I think probably the craziest thing was when that boat engine blew up. And the only reason it was so crazy is because the seller of the boat wasn't there. So this was an early learning for me. Occasionally you'll have someone and they say, I'm too busy to do the sea trial. You just take it. So the buyer was there and the buyer was driving, but a lot of questions were asked afterwards. What did you do to my boat? Now, we didn't do anything to his boat. What happened was when the engine got stripped down, it had a water leak that was leaking water internally into the engine, and it just happened to fail at that point. But it was a double-edged learning because you don't want to be in that position where they say, what did you do to my boat? You'd rather they're there and they see what's happened because it can be pretty stressful explaining it to someone.
Oh, totally. What's changed in the process now?
So yeah, early on I'd say, okay, we can take it without you there. Now they've always got to be there. They've always got to be driving it.
Yeah. Okay.
Them or their representative.
Right. What's the strangest client request you've ever had?
I haven't really had anything that crazy, to be honest. It's
got a good filter.
Yeah. If you consider it strange, like in my mind, strange is not putting a boat in for a test run.
Yeah.
That's not strange because it's convenient, but it's strange if you want a thorough report.
Yeah. What's the wildest thing you've seen on a Sydney waterway? We'll include Gold Coast as well, because I've done a few shoots up there recently, and it's very different from what I'm used to in Sydney.
Yeah, look, just a little bit of nudity, really. Like
Yeah.
I
Okay.
try to keep it pretty tame and
Yeah.
keep myself out of trouble, so I don't see too much.
Not on the Bucks Party weekend boats or anything.
Yeah. But yeah, there's some pretty good parties out there on boats, put it that way.
Yeah. What's the most challenging engine room you've ever worked in?
Oh, geez, there's a few.
Boat engine rooms are not built for hanging around and having a lot of room to move and stuff like that.
Yep. So in that 30-foot range, when boats have 2 engines and a generator, the engine base can be pretty tight. I think the model that comes straight to mind, it's either a 4-Winds 328 or a 318, and they've got a hatch that you've only got access to one engine. You've got to unbolt it all and pull this whole engine hatch out just to see the other side of one engine and see some of the generator. That's probably the tightest. But with that being said, you can still get on a big boat that's just got lots of stuff jammed in there and it's really tight.
Yeah. And you're not a small guy, so that doesn't help anything either. What's an app you can't live without?
Look, probably, I know it's not self-promoting, just the mail app.
Right.
You live in your emails these days. It's like, it's addictive, really. Like you keep checking emails. Probably couldn't live. Oh, even maps as well. Maps is another one. I put the GPS on everywhere. I don't necessarily need to, but definitely an app I can't live without. The minute you touch down in a new city and you don't have reception, you go to put the Maps app on and you're like, I don't know where I am.
Yeah. I think mine's Waze, because if I didn't have Waze, I'd lose my license for sure. My kids are always like, why do you have the map on, Dad? You know where you're going? I was like, I do know where I'm going, but I don't know where the police are hiding or where the speed cameras are. How about what's a physical tool that you can't live without?
As a surveyor, a little ball peen hammer. Tap the bottom of the hull.
Seeing where the hollow spots are or the bog is or stuff like that?
As silly as it sounds, it's the most simple tool you can get. But just listening to the difference in percussion when you tap a stringer or you tap the underside of a hull is a tool that you can't live without.
You'd have a mini one on your keychain or something. That'd be pretty good. What's one thing about the marine industry most people don't know?
So I think one thing that people don't realize is how many boats we actually build in Australia. So when you actually go and start researching, we've got Maritimos, Rivs, Whitleys, Haynes Hunters. I'm going to get flamed in the comments because there's going to be people like, you forgot this boat.
There's a lot of boats.
There's a lot of boats that we build in Australia, and it's pretty cool to say, hey, we blast around in our own stuff.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think it's awesome, and definitely needs to be more promotion about it. Some of the boats around here. If you weren't working in the marine industry, what do you think you'd be doing?
Oh, I'd go straight into marketing.
I'd back you. If you could go back, what would you tell 15-year-old Aaron?
I would say, don't give up. Like, not that I did, but the marine industry will be good to you, and you'll make a good career out of it, and it'll be an awesome lifestyle. I remember finishing the apprenticeship. Once you've done your apprenticeship, you're sort of there scratching your head. I remember thinking, oh, should I go to uni? Should I do this? Should I do that? I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah, it's good when we find the right path. And you learn from whatever you're doing before you get to where you are supposed to be, I guess, at the time. But yeah, I know like all the things I've done before getting to this place in my career, like, I didn't always love them, but I'm thankful for them at what they taught me to get to where you are now. Like you wouldn't be doing the same work you're doing without all the learnings from all the different kind of jobs and careers that you've had. So what's the best piece of advice you've ever ignored?
So I suppose the best advice that I didn't take was early on. It was just me for a long time. Like I didn't hire anybody. And when you do hire other people and, grow the team, it's one of the best things you can do because you get other people's perspectives and, the whole system grows as a result. And you also get to be around other people.
Yeah, that's a huge benefit. Just the conversation, let alone like being able to grow. You can only do so much yourself. That's actually something that I definitely heard a lot, but hadn't, I guess, actioned it until recently. And it is so different. Like I couldn't do this podcast if it was just me. I couldn't do a lot of the things. Was there a reason why you just wanted to be yourself?
Look, I was just scared to hire other people and give it a crack. But I think, hiring other people and growing it is the best thing you can do. It's stepping out of your comfort zone. The best thing to do is just push yourself every day, and then it doesn't become scary anymore.
Yeah, I love that. Who is it that generally reaches out to Boatbuy?
I do get a lot of real estate agents. they're an example of someone who have been dealing in transaction type businesses, and they definitely see the value because they would have seen where a good, building and pest has saved a lot of money. I've even had boat brokers hire me for them when they're representing other clients. So essentially buyers agents. For me, that's like, oh, wow, I'm flattered. I'm stoked that you hired me. And then also just the general population. It's really cool seeing people have success over the years. So like I might not see someone for 3 years, but their business has doubled and now they're getting a 50-foot boat and they started on a trailer boat. Or you've had people that have this crazy progression and you're like, wow, like I love that. I would do the same thing if I had that.
That's awesome. Do you think, is that saying true? The average boat owner owns 7 boats in their lifetime or something. Have you seen a lot of that?
Yeah. Look, people definitely have a boating problem and there's a lot of people that buy and sell. And I've seen people go full circle. They have a boat, 20 years ago with their wife, they sell it. They own 5 or 6 boats in between. And then they come back to that same, 1995 boat that they had all this good time on.
Yeah.
Because it's just like the memories are set and that's the boat they want.
Well, what's your boating journey?
So I've always thought to myself, I need to have some skin in the game and I need to see what it's like to be one of my customers.
So you wanted a boating problem too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I learned the hard way with my first boat when I was 15. I bought a boat that lived under a tree that was fiberglass, that was full of water. But that wasn't sort of the learning. It was a learning phase because I spent all this money on it and I could have had a nearly new boat and got all my money back when I sold it if I had done that instead of restoring it. The 2 favorite boats that I've had, I had a Sunrunner 33. That was about 5-6 years ago. And that was when I was inspecting a lot of stern drives. And that was a real eye-opener for me because I was doing a lot of these for other customers and I got to see all the things that went wrong with me and learn a lot. And, I could educate people better because I'd been in the exact situation that they're in. And then the last boat that I had, which, I'm still pinching myself every day, was a Princess V50.
Oh, wow.
It was a little bit of a risky situation. I had money pulled out for an investment property and then this boat came up and I knew there was a bit of an opportunity to keep it for a period of time and then move it along. But then I still had to buy that investment property. So the boat had to go and obviously the sun came along. But yeah, the Princess V50 was awesome because it was like I was in the same spots as all my favorite customers and, I could relate. Do you know what I mean? It was like I got these 600 horsepower engines and I just couldn't wipe the smile off my face ear to ear. I was like, this is exactly where I wanted to be.
That's awesome. And sometimes, we have to do that, I think, buy the thing that maybe we shouldn't do, whether it's a reward or whether it's just something that helps you enjoy life a bit more or connects to the clients that you want to assimilate with. Princess is a V50 is pretty great. Do you have a favorite day out with the Princess?
Yeah, well, look, that was a pretty cool boat because, like I said, Sydney Harbour's only an hour and a half away. So we took that down to Vivid. My one sort of lifetime goal when I was a kid was to take a boat to Darling Harbour Marina and sleep on it and, be one of those people that's tied up at the marina. And I got to live that dream with that boat. I soon found out that you need earplugs to sleep there and you're probably better off on a mooring somewhere else. But it was just a surreal experience.
That's awesome. Aaron, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on and having a chat. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing your story and your insights. For anyone else that's interested in learning more about Aaron and Boatbuy, be sure to check out Boatbuy at boatbuy.com.au and follow Aaron on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You also give away a free boat purchase contract for when buying a used boat, which I'll link in the show notes. So thank you again, Aaron.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen. I'm forever grateful for this awesome experience and opportunity. You've got an amazing setup and an amazing podcast.
Awesome. Very cool, buddy. Thank you. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review and share it with someone who you think would find it inspiring or valuable. And if you know someone in the industry as awesome as Aaron, send them my way, share it with them. I'd love to have them on. Catch you on the next episode of the Rising Tidecast.